Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabansi. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things. And we see them. And today we got a pretty interesting show. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, we are, I think, at the beginning of the off season. Although there are going to be some moves that are going to be made throughout this off season, but pretty much. We're in the off season. If you follow a lot of NBA content out there, a lot of these guys are covering some of the off season stories, and some of it has been a bit boring, to be quite honest with you. I'm not really interested in the Damian Lillard sweepstakes and what's going on with him and the Miami Heat. I don't really think that's an interesting storyline. Maybe for some people it is, right? But for me, it's not really interesting. Now, I have been tracking this news that is centered on the Los Angeles Clippers, right? I've been following the Clippers. As you guys know, my favorite player, Kawhi Leonard, plays for the Clippers, and he's been a major disappointment to me and a lot of people that support the team. So I've been following, that team. And I think that the frustration that we feel, we usually get it from the standpoint of the fans, right? The fans are frustrated that this team is not performing well, but we rarely hear it from what people inside the organization are feeling, because usually what ends up happening is that organizations try to put on a brave face. So whenever you see them talking to the president of the basketball operations or the GM, they're like, oh, we love these guys. They're a great duo, blah, 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 blah. But internally, you know that they feel differently. So this morning, I was listening to a segment, or it was a pretty long show, a podcast from the Hoop Collective. It's an ESPN show. And they were talking specifically about the expectations for the Clippers this season. And as I was listening to it, they started bringing up some pretty interesting information in terms of how people within the Clippers organization, and even the owner of the team, Steve Ballmer, in terms of their deep-rooted frustration with the duo of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. So what we want to do is play exactly what was said in this what was said in this podcast, and then we're going to come back and unpack this thing. So take a listen to that.
So, you're with the Clippers a lot. I know you covered the Nuggets throughout the playoff run, but you know the Clippers as well as anybody. To me, the fascinating thing about the Clippers is that this summer, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they've got 1 year left on their contracts, and then they've got a player option. So it technically can be 2 years. But in the modern era, when an all-star level player has a year guaranteed left on his contract, we typically see some sort of extension discussion. Last year, for example, it was LeBron. LeBron had 1 year left on his contract, and he did a 1+1 extension. He added 1 year plus one. Even a player in his upper 30s did it. There's a bunch of players this year who will be in extension discussions. Maybe we can talk about with Bobby at some point. But this is a fascinating decision because Kawhi has had another surgery that the Clippers announced last week. They called it a cleanup procedure. I don't know what that means. It means that he's coming off that injury. I guess he suffered in the playoffs. Paul George was unable to finish last season due to an injury, and so I question, is this a simple decision? Do they extend them? Do they not extend them? Do they negotiate not a full extension? So, give me your feel on the state of the Clippers right now.
I don't think it's a simple decision. I think I have not spoken to Steve Ballmer, but I clearly remember his face at the end of that loss in Phoenix. And I think it was just of this frustration that why can't my stars be healthy? Why can't this team ever be healthy? And I think business-wise, Steve Ballmer is probably wondering, I've spent all this money to make this a first-class franchise, and I cannot get my stars basically to play. I think Paul George had Jerry West on his pod recently, and I think Jerry West said it right to Paul George's face, something like, it's absolutely unbelievable that we have two stars of this caliber and you guys cannot stay healthy. So I think that's definitely an echo from the entire the frustration of the franchise. I've tried asking Lawrence Frank this numerous times. Like at the end of his season press conference, he was talking about improving the team. I said, well, how do you improve availability? That's the biggest thing about this team. You just don't have your two stars. So I asked Lawrence this the other night at the end of the draft last week. I said, you've got your two superstars and extensions coming up. What is your feeling about extending these guys, especially the length of the extensions, because the cap is going to be so restrictive for them? Like, I think the Clippers are at a massive crossroads here, and Bobby can certainly talk more in depth about this, but this team has to figure out, we want to stay competitive and win a championship now. Our window is closing. We are entering a new building in Inglewood in like not next season, but the season after that. And Steve Ballmer wants a competitive team going into that to sell tickets and keep that team relevant. But you don't want to be stuck with two superstars on massive contracts that can't stay healthy, who are certainly getting up there in age as well. And you certainly want to have young prospects going into that season when you go into the new building as well, young talent. So I feel like, they are trying to straddle this line and walk this fine line of how do we stay competitive to win a championship now and build around Kawhi and build around Paul, but also still have a team that's going to be competitive for a long time to come. And now we got to deal with this new CBA. So I think that's a tough decision. If you look at Steve Ballmer, what he did with Ty Lue probably this summer, like Ty Lue was looking for a new deal, certainly more money. And I think Steve Ballmer's like, look, you're still under contract. Look, we love you. We want to keep you, but you're still under contract. I think they're starting to think about, like, what is the best way to spend money smartly with this team and still try to win a championship and still be competitive for years to come.
So you heard what they said. Now, first of all, I can believe this. The reason I can believe this is because these are human beings, man. Human beings go through all of the emotions. And even though you see Steve Ballmer at the sideline, cheering and in total jubilation, having the time of his life, it will be safe to say that he also feels the disappointment that a lot of the fans feel, because Steve Ballmer seems like someone that is very, very invested in his team. He seems to be a very, very big basketball fan. He's always with the team watching the games. He's probably their biggest cheerleader, one of their biggest cheerleaders, of course, alongside Clipper Darrell, who was talking to Keyshawn, Max Kellerman, and Jay Williams this morning, and they had a little interesting back and forth when he called Stephen A. Smith. He called him Stephen A. Leonard, which was pretty funny. But I can understand this. I think that going into this expectation, Steve Ballmer and these guys wanted to swing for the fence. They wanted to, win big. It's one of the reasons they doubled down on Kawhi Leonard and they caved into some of the demands that he made towards the organization in terms of going out there and securing a top of the shelf talent like Paul George. But after 4 years, man, it's just been a total disappointment. And the thing about the Clippers is not that, okay, they're disappointing because they continue to lose. No. Any team can lose. The Golden State Warriors have won years and the years that they've lost. In the case of the Clippers, they're not even in a position to compete. Whenever it's time for them to go into the playoffs and make a run at it, something unfortunate happens, and is always centered around Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. They only had one healthy run. Out of 4 attempts, just one healthy crack at it. And to me, I think over time, disappointment will begin to set in, and ultimately frustration will start to build up, especially when you look at the investment that these guys have made. Do you know how much money Steve Ballmer and these guys have pumped into that new arena in Inglewood? Do you guys understand the amount of money that has been allocated for that type of project? And then to go out there and have a team where you pretty much give them everything that they need. You give them a top of the shelf coach, all the talent, and then the 2 best players just cannot find a way to stay healthy. It must be immensely frustrating. You even heard when he said, even Jerry West expressed the internal frustrations of the Clippers on the Paul George podcast. He was like, for whatever reasons, these guys just cannot remain healthy. Now, some people will say, oh, it's a curse or whatever. I don't know that, right? I don't know that, right? But I'm not a seer, but I can definitely understand the frustrations, and I think that Kawhi Leonard and these guys are on thin ice with this team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make a move. I wouldn't be surprised if they make a move, because you can't have a situation in which where you have two guys earning so much money and they're never there. That just cannot be the scenario. That is not the recipe for success, in my personal view. So what I want to know from you guys is, what do you think about this report? What do you think about hearing that the top brass and people within the organization are actually growing frustrated with the situation? Whatever you guys think, leave your thoughts in the comments, and we catch you on the next show.